So, a lot of people have fireplaces. They love the kind of the romantic feeling of making a fire in their fireplace. Um, how does that affect air quality? What are the dangers of having a fireplace?
So traditional wood burning fireplaces that have like an open front that you open up the grate and just put a log in. From an air quality standpoint, those are probably the worst things you can have for a fireplace because of the particulates from the smoke itself. If you want that look and that feel, uh, there are products out there that are made mainly in Europe. There's a brand that I've worked with over the years called Race, Rais, and Race stoves are wood burning stoves that are completely open up the door and put a log in, but the smoke goes through a secondary combustion in the pipe so that you don't have those same particulates that you would get wafting back into the space. So those are a lot better. If you still want the look and the feel and hear the crackling of the wood, that would be the way to go. And then the other way would be a gas stove. You got to be careful with those. You have to make sure that they're fully sealed and vented to the outside because you certainly don't want to have any of that combustion coming back in the house. And then the new wave of stoves that have been coming out are kind of like the idea of a gas stove, but they use different types of fuel. They use things like butane or odorless kerosene and other things that, again, fully sealed, vented to the outside, but there's no ability for any of that combustion to get into the house. And they typically don't use fake wood logs. They use glass, broken glass to give you that real shiny, flickery effect. So there are ways to do it that are healthier. You just have to, choose wisely.
Thank you. What are our TVs doing to us as far as EMFs or electric fields? Is that okay? Is that something that we should be concerned about? Are there TVs that are worse than others? Are the new, flat screens that have come out over the last decade or so worse than the old school or better?
I think from a standpoint of direct human health, probably the worst things we have in our homes are these smart devices. And just about every TV you find nowadays is a smart TV. Same holds true though with new wash machines and refrigerators and even stoves and ovens. Anything that's connected to Wi-Fi means that it's constantly searching for a Wi-Fi signal, which means you're going to get more of those radio waves in the home. If you do have a TV that's considered a smart device, uh, disconnect it from the internet, disconnect it from any Wi-Fi. I try to, and it's impossible these days, I know, but I try to limit my exposure to Wi-Fi as much as I possibly can. And everything that I'll do will be hardwired. I can use things like Bluetooth headsets because Bluetooth doesn't have that radio wave that's problematic for us. Um, but if you're going to use the internet in your home, and you're on a laptop or a pad of some sort, you can actually buy adapters to hook up these devices to a direct line. And so the same thing is true with all of your, again, TV and so forth. You have to have internet for your TV to make sure it's hardwired. Beyond that, I think that it's just like any other electrical appliance in our home. We don't want to be very close to it. I remember years ago, growing up in the 70s, and my parents always yelling at me because I was too close to the TV, right? And I think that's because they didn't want my eyes to go blurry. But I think nowadays, you need to stay away from the TV. I'd rather have you get a larger TV and sit further away from it. I think that's actually healthier for us.
So you would recommend if you have the option to use an internet cable, like an Ethernet cable, in order to hook up the TV and shut off the Wi-Fi, basically, is what I'm hearing.
100%, 100%.
All right, great. Should we try to live far away from a main road to lower air pollution? How important is
Um, I think the difference is whether you're living in a rural environment versus a city environment, right? I think that if you live off of a rural highway, a rural, 2-lane highway. I don't think that you're really going to be subjecting yourself to the amount of air pollution that you would be if you lived in an apartment in downtown Chicago. And so I personally think that it's better to live a little bit further away from pollutants. But I definitely don't advocate for everybody having to find their 30 acres somewhere in the middle of nowhere. We still need to be connected to people somehow and connected to our family and friends. But the way that air pollution sort of travels, unless you're in really deep in the middle of nowhere, or you're right in the middle of a city, that kind of an in-between areas, the suburbs and more rural suburbs really aren't much different than each other.
So you mentioned a moment ago about you're not really worried about the Bluetooth. What's the difference between Bluetooth, wireless radiation, electric fields, and magnetic fields, and which one should we be should concern us, and how do we measure and fix any of the stuff that we discover?
Yeah, and again, that's something that I would probably have you talk to electrical experts on. All I can say is that in my time with the Building Biology Institute, the one thing that I really learned, my good takeaway on this was, if you're using Bluetooth-enabled devices aren't the same type of microwave or radio frequency wave that you would find in a cell phone. So if I have a cell phone and I put it up to my ear, you're getting that microwave directly, and it can travel millimeters to centimeters into the body. All right. Bluetooth doesn't do that. And so at least from what the experts have told me, if you're using a Bluetooth device, you're not going to get that same direct involvement from the microwave. So, and how do you measure it? It's by the use of what are called tri-field meters to measure the different wavelengths. Again, in a home, I would say that Wi-Fi or anything that's connected to a cell tower, or if you have what's called a wireless router in your house, so you have an Ethernet cable or a coax cable from the cable company into your home for your internet and your television. If you put that to a wireless router and now you have wireless internet throughout your house, that's as detrimental as a wave coming from a cell tower. Maybe not be as strong, but it's closer to us as well. So I want to limit waves coming from cell towers. I want to limit waves coming from wireless routers.
Okay, and we got about 4 minutes left. So 5G, to the experts that you talk to, do you talk to them about 5G?
Yeah, we've talked quite a bit about that. Every iteration of wireless cell service gets better and better for us from a standpoint of convenience, but it gets worse and worse for us from a standpoint of health. Now, I've gone back and forth with some of the experts on 5G when it first came out. All of the studies that I have read on wireless cell service, or on the cell waves, really kind of stopped at 4G. And there hasn't been a lot of definitive research done on 5G to say that it is far worse than 4G, except, and this is the big except, if you drive around and you see these giant cell towers, at the top of it are these giant radars or devices emanating the signal. That's not 5G. The ones that are 5G are the smaller ones that are connected to the corners of buildings, to lampposts outside on the street, to water towers. I even saw some on a farm silo driving today, and it's stronger. The wave is far stronger than 4G from a pipeline standpoint, but not from a distance. So 5G is really strong, but only for a short distance compared to 4G, which is not as strong, but travels further. So I think there needs to be more research done to show like how close or how far away is the safe zone But then the further you get away from the 5G signal, the less signal you have to use for your devices. And so there's got to be a sort of a sweet spot, and I haven't seen anything that tells me what that is yet.
Thank you. Right, we got about 1 or 2 minutes left. Is there any final thoughts that you would like to leave the audience with?
Well, first off, I mean, thank you everybody for coming to this today. I mean, to show up on a Saturday evening and to listen to me scaring the hell out of people about our homes. Thank you for putting up with me. I say these things because, yeah, it is kind of shocking. That what we're living with. People who lived in homes 100 years ago didn't have to worry about these things. Of course, they had to worry about other things like asbestos and lead and whatnot, but those are things that we could see, right? We could see those problems. And when we found out that asbestos was bad for us, we took it out of our house. But what the problems we face today, we don't necessarily see all the time. And so we really have to be a little bit more diligent. And I'm not saying rip down your house and rebuild. What I'm saying is, if it's time to repaint one of the rooms in your house, maybe do a little more investigation on buying a paint that's not going to cause problems for anybody living in the house. If it's the same price, the same colors available, and you can get it relatively quickly, these are things that we can be doing on a very easy basis. If it's time to remodel your kitchen, then we can help remodel your kitchen with completely toxin-free building materials, right? But don't rip out your kitchen cabinets now unless you really need to. All right. So choose these things wisely. Do it as you can, and by all means, if you have questions, reach out and talk to somebody who's an expert in this.
Great, Robert. Thank you so much. Can we unmute the audience, please?
Thank
you, Andrew.
That was cute.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew.